The envelope sat on the desk, plain, cream-colored, sealed with a thumb of red wax that had never been broken. A single line of handwriting curved across the front, written by a woman who had seen the Virgin Mary as a child and who had grown old with a secret pressing against her ribs like a second heart. The line said the letter was not to be opened until 1960. Beneath that line, in the same careful hand, a name, the Patriarch of Lisbon, or the Bishop of Leiria. No one else, not the Holy Father, not the Curia, not the world. The door of the papal study was locked from the inside. The Pope alone stood before the desk. His hand trembled. He had waited years for this moment, and now that it had come, he did not want it. He stared at the wax. He prayed. And then he picked up the letter opener. This is the story of that envelope. Where it was written, by whom, in what room, with what trembling. How it traveled from a stone convent in Portugal to the deepest archive of the Vatican. How 7 popes, one after the other, held it in their hands behind a closed door. What they said when they came out. What they did not say. Why the world had to wait until the year 2000 to read part of it. And why, in this year of our Lord, with a new Pope now sitting on the chair of Peter, the faithful are beginning to hope that what was hidden may finally be brought fully into the light. If you have ever felt that there is something the Church has been carrying for you, something meant for this generation, stay with this. Pray with it. And in the comments, tell those who pray with you that you too were watching. It begins in a cell. Tui, on the border between Spain and Portugal. The year is 1943. A nun in a Dorothean habit, Sister Lúcia dos Santos, the last living visionary of Fátima, is gravely ill. She's 46 years old. She has carried the third part of the secret of Our Lady inside her since 1917. When she was 10, she has told it to no one. Not to her cousins Francisco and Jacinta, who died in the influenza pandemic. Not to her mother. Not to the parish priest, not even to her confessor in full. Heaven, she said, had not given her permission. Now her superiors fear she will die with it. The Bishop of Leiria, the diocese where Fátima rests, is José Alves Correa da Silva, a small man with a white beard and steady eyes. He has been the shepherd of that valley since the apparitions were investigated. He knows Lúcia. He has watched her grow from a peasant girl who tended sheep into a quiet, exhausted nun who carries something heavier than herself. In late 1943 he writes to her. He tells her in the name of the Holy Mother and in the name of holy obedience to put the third part of the secret on paper. Lúcia obeys. She always obeys, but she cannot write it. She tries. She fails. She tries again. She fails again. A wall rises in her mind every time her pen approaches the page. She writes to the bishop. She says she cannot. She asks to be released from the order. He does not release her. He commands her in the name of the Mother of God. And then, on January 3rd, 1944, in her small cell in Tui, with the cold of the Spanish winter pressing against the stone, Lúcia sees a light. Our Lady, she will later say, appeared to her one final time concerning this matter. The wall came down. The hand that could not move moved. The pen scratched across the paper. She wrote it down. We do not know exactly how long it took her. We do not know if she paused. We do not know what was in her eyes when she set the pen down. We know only that when she was finished, she folded the page, she placed it inside an envelope, and she closed that envelope with wax. Then she wrote a sentence on the outside. The The sentence is the reason this story exists. The sentence said the envelope was to remain sealed until the year 1960, until the death of Lucia herself, if that came first. And it was to be opened when the time came, only by the Patriarch of Lisbon or by the Bishop of Leiria, not by anyone else. She did not write the words Holy Father. She did not write the words Roman Pontiff. She believed in the deepest part of her that what was inside the envelope was meant for the bishop closest to the apparitions, the bishop of the soil of Fatima itself. She handed the letter to a trusted intermediary. He traveled by hand, by train, by horse, by the slow Portuguese roads of the war years, until it reached the bishop's residence in Leiria in June of 1944. The bishop took it, he held it, he did not open it, he locked it in the safe of the curia of his diocese, and there it stayed, for 13 years, through the rest of the war, through the rebuilding, through the deaths of statesmen and the rise of new ones, through the steady erosion of one Europe and the slow construction of another. The envelope sat in a Portuguese safe in a town most of the world had never heard of, holding inside it whatever the Mother of God had asked a peasant girl to remember. In 1957, the Holy Office in Rome asked for the envelope. They want it under the protection of the Apostolic Archive. The Bishop of Leiria considers, he prays, he agrees. On April 4th, 1957, the letter is carried from Portugal to the Vatican. It is placed in the archive of the Holy Office, what older Catholics still call the secret archive. It is locked, it is shelved, it waits. 3 years later, the world waits with it. Because the date on the envelope, the year Lucia herself had inscribed in her own hand, has arrived, 1960. The press, even then, in a Europe far less hungry for spectacle, begins to speak of it. Will the Holy Father read it? Will he tell us? What did the Lady of the Cova show that child? The Vatican issues a short statement. The secret will remain sealed. No reason is given. The faithful, those who pray the rosary and light the candles and ward the stations, feel a small, sharp ache. They had been told somehow in homilies and parish bulletins that a great revelation was coming. And the revelation does not come. The door has closed. The wax has not been broken, but it has. That is the thing the world did not know. Behind the locked door of the papal study in 1959, in the last months of that year, Pope John XXIII, the round and kind father of the council, asked for the envelope. It is brought to him by Father Pier Paul Felipe of the Holy Office, with the agreement of Cardinal Alfredo Ottaviani. The Pope receives it in his apartments. He breaks the wax. He reads. He is alone. We do not have his face in that moment. We do not have his breath. We have only his decision. He folds the page. He places it back inside the envelope. And he says, in a phrase that has come down to us through the men who served him, that this revelation does not concern the years of his pontificate. He returns the letter to the archive. He does not destroy it. He does not publish it. He carries it inside him the way Lucia did until he dies in 1963. The envelope passes to his successor, Pope Paul VI, the Pope of the Council's completion, the Pope of the encyclicals, and the long exhausted reforms. In March of 1965, Cardinal Ottaviani brings the letter to him. Paul reads it. We have, in this case, even less of his reaction than we had of John's. A pause, a folding, a return. He too leaves the letter in the archive. He too says nothing public. The men around him later recalled only that he seemed, in those days, more silent than usual. The wax has been broken twice. The world still does not know. 13 years later, in the brutal summer of 1978, Paul VI dies. The conclave elects a man almost no one expected. Albino Luciani, the Patriarch of Venice, he takes the name John Paul I. He smiles. He speaks of God as mother as well as father. He calls himself the smiling Pope. And according to those close to him in those days, he asks for the envelope. He reads it. What he thought, what he felt, what he intended to do, we do not know. Because 33 days after his election, he's found dead in his bed, his Bible open beside him. The envelope returns to the archive. The wax that was broken has now been broken 3 times. The chair of Peter sits empty again. The man elected next is the man who will define the century. Karol Wojtyła, Pope John Paul II, a Polish bishop who, as a young man, had been struck by a German truck and given up for dead, who had survived the Nazis and the Soviets, who had lived under 2 of the great false religions of the 20th century and seen them for what they were. He is elected in October of 1978. According to the careful reconstructions that have come down to us, he reads the 3rd part of the secret within days. The story may even be more than that. There is a reading, gentle and contemplative, that Catholics who love Fatima have learned to trust. 3 years after his election, on the feast of Our Lady of Fatima itself, May 13th, 1981, a Turkish gunman stands in St. Peter's Square and pulls a trigger. 3 bullets enter the Pope's body. He should die. He does not. He says, years later, looking at the bullet that has been placed in the crown of the statue of the Virgin at Fatima, the one hand pulled the trigger and another hand guided the bullet. He believes, with the certainty of a man who has stood on the edge of his own death, that Our Lady of Fatima saved his life. And he believes that she saved it for a reason, because the secret was about him, about a pope like him. A bishop dressed in white, walking through a city half in ruins, falling beneath the shots of soldiers. For the next 19 years, John Paul II carries the secret. He visits Fatima 3 times. He kneels at the shrine. He places the bullet in the crown. And finally, in the great jubilee of the year 2000, with the millennium turning, with the world watching, he authorizes the partial release. On May 13th of that year, at Fatima itself, with Sister Lúcia present, Cardinal Angelo Sodano stands at the microphone and reads. The 3rd part of the secret, he says, is a vision. A bishop dressed in white, an angel with a flaming sword, a great mountain, the figures of the dead. He frames it gently and pastorally as a prophetic vision concerning the persecutions of the Church in the 20th century, fulfilled in the blood of the martyrs, fulfilled above all in the assassination attempt of 1981. The text is published the following month, June 26, 2000, in a document signed by Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, then prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. The same man who, 8 years later, would sit on the chair of Peter himself. And here is where the great wound opens, because some of the faithful, holy and devout and prayerful, read the document and feel that something is missing. The vision is there. But where are the words of the Virgin? The first 2 secrets contained words. Mary spoke. She named hell, she named Russia, she named the consecration. And in the 3rd part, in this published vision, no words, no interpretation from heaven itself. Only a vision, then silence. Catholic scholars and theologians have written volumes about this question. Some are at peace. They trust the Holy See. They believe what was given is what was given. Others are not at peace. They believe a sheet of paper, a few lines of Mary's own speech may still rest in the archive. They do not accuse. They simply wait. They pray. They light candles. They wonder if the day will come when the rest will be read aloud. Then comes the second wound. Sister Lúcia herself dies on February 13, 2005. She had lived to be 97. She had carried the secret for 88 years. In the years before her death, she gave interviews. She wrote letters. She spoke with Cardinal Bertone, the man sent to her on behalf of John Paul II and later Benedict XVI. She confirmed the Vatican has said that the published vision is the third part of the secret. There is nothing more. She said it clearly. The faithful who trust her. Others gently ask if a nun under obedience and watched her whole life would have answered differently if she could. We do not know. We are not permitted to know. We are only permitted to pray. Pope Benedict XVI sits on the chair of Peter for nearly 8 years. The man who wrote the theological commentary on the Third Secret is now the man who could open the archive further if he chose. He does not. He goes to Fátima in 2010. He says, in a phrase that has shaken theologians ever since, that those who think the message of Fátima is finished are mistaken. Something more, he hints, may still be unfolding. He resigns in 2013. The envelope, or what remains in its file, returns to silence. Pope Francis follows. 12 years on the chair. A Pope of mercy, of the peripheries, of the silent acts. He too reads the file. He too says little publicly about its inner contents. He honors Fátima. He consecrates Russia and Ukraine to the Immaculate Heart in 2022, an act long requested by the faithful of Fátima. And then, after years of failing health, he dies in April of last year. The chair is empty again. The white smoke rises again, and the world meets the man whose name now sits at the top of this story. Pope Leo XIV, the first North American Pope, an Augustinian, a man of quiet learning and deep silence. The cardinals elected him in May of last year, and within days, the world began asking what he would do, what he would change, what doors he would open. He went to Fátima in spirit on his first feast of Our Lady of Fátima as Pope, May 13th of this year. He did not travel to Portugal. He stood in St. Peter's Square, and in a gesture no one had prepared the world for, in the middle of his general audience, with the crowd watching, he walked to the exact spot where John Paul II had fallen 45 years earlier. The white marble plaque is set into the cobblestones. He stopped at it. He stood in silence. He prayed. The crowd, who at first did not understand what was happening, fell silent with him. And then he returned to his catechesis and spoke of the Virgin Mary as the model of the Church, the homeland of the people of God, the woman who teaches us how to love. He said nothing about the envelope. He did not name the third secret. He did not announce a release. He prayed at the spot of the bullet on the feast of the apparition in front of the world. And the faithful, watching, began to feel something they had not felt in many years. A small turning of the key. What some are now saying, gently and without any official confirmation, is that this Pope, schooled in the rigor of Augustine, formed in the missions, unafraid of long silence and of the patient work of truth, will not be a Pope who hides. Some sources around the Vatican are suggesting that under Leo, the spiritual treasury of Fatima may be opened more fully than it has been in our lifetime. Not in a single dramatic announcement, perhaps, but slowly, like the rolling away of a great stone. What the faithful are hoping for is not scandal. It is not spectacle. It is the gentle full disclosure of what Our Lady asked Lucia to remember, with the calm authority of a pope who is not afraid of what is true. It may come. It may not come. We do not pretend to know what is in the heart of this pope or in the heart of the mother who guides him, but we know what we have. We know the envelope was real. We know it was written in 1944 in a cold convent cell. We know it crossed Portugal in 1944 and was placed in a safe in Leiria. We know it crossed into the Vatican archive in 1957. We know 7 popes have held it: John the 23rd, Paul the 6th, John Paul I, John Paul II, Benedict the 16th, Francis, and now Leo the 14th. We know part of it was given to us in the year 2000. And we know that the questions, the holy questions, asked by faithful Catholics around the world have not been answered to every heart's full peace. That is not a failure. That is the way heaven often speaks. In pieces, in waiting, in a feast day, a plaque on a cobblestone, a pope kneeling in silence. The Third Secret of Fátima was never meant to be a headline. It was meant to be a call to prayer, to penance, to consecration, to the rosary, to the long, slow turning of the human heart back to the mother who first appeared above an oak tree to 3 small children in 1917 and said very simply that she was the Lady of the Rosary, and that in the end her immaculate heart would triumph. That is what Lucia carried. That is what she sealed in wax. That is what 7 popes have read. That is what the 8th, this Augustinian pope from across the ocean, now holds in his hands as he holds his rosary. Whether he opens the rest or whether heaven asks him to keep it a little longer, the meaning for us does not change. The meaning is the prayer. The meaning is the candle. The meaning is the trust. We have been told enough to live. We have been told enough to repent. We have been told enough to hope. And the envelope, with whatever it still contains, sits in a quiet room behind a quiet door, on a shelf no camera has ever seen, in the keeping of a mother who has never once in 2,000 years forgotten her children. Light a candle, say the rosary, and watch with the eyes of a child of Fatima the slow and reverent work of a pope who, the faithful are praying, will not be afraid to lift the seal.